Hey everyone, this is Jaron Turnbow, the Executive Director for Dallas Pride. We have two special guests today. We have Matthew Roberts from the 2020 Census Bureau and Inya Endo from the DFW Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence. We're going to be doing a Q&A today for the census. We spoke with the census back last year, I do believe it was, and it was very important for us as Dallas Pride to help get the message out and work to get as many people counted as we can. It's very important for the LGBT community and for everybody in general. I mean, it needs to be done. So we set up this little Q&A with the sisters. The Sisters Talk Census, who is also the DFW Sisters are also partnering up with the census this year. So we thought it was a good tie-in, and we have everybody here today to answer some questions. So Inya, how did you end up here?
You know, I don't really remember. It was a long night last night. Now, actually, COVID's got me stuck at home. So I believe there was an email that we received seeing if any one of us would be interested in helping out, and I volunteered to do so. It's kind of an interest to me. So I wanted to learn a little bit more about it.
Awesome, good deal.
And I guess I'll say why I'm here. And it seems somewhat obvious because I'm the LGBTQ partnership specialist for the census here in the DFW area. But I always, it's one of those common jokes. I'm here with the government. I'm here to help. And that makes people nervous right there. And that's why we have partners that we work with to help put out the word, to advocate, once they recognize or know why this stuff is really important. And it is important. The census is, this decennial census is done every 10 years. It's constitutionally required. It's not only about it being legal, it's really about it also being incredibly important and beneficial to our communities, to a number of diverse communities, both politically and in terms of federal resources. It's important to say that while you might think, well, because it's legal, everyone's just doing it, it doesn't really work out that way. Not just LGBTQ, but in general, a lot of people put it off. They put off the census, or they don't want to do it, all sorts of reasons. And so right now, nationally, the self-response rate for the census is about 64% of households. And as we'll get into a little bit later what that means, but 64 is, we're off by quite a number, and we only have until the end of September to collect all that data.
What's the normal rate, or like 10 years ago, what was the rate at this point of the game?
Well, okay, so from what I understand from my colleagues, and it's interesting, a number of people come back to do the census every 10 years. They find it enriching. But to say that we were about the same rate as we would be 10 years ago, that this 60-ish% is about the same. But one of the big differences is that we're trying to reduce the use of enumerators, reduce the number of people who have to go door to door to do this, because it's incredibly expensive to send out all those enumerators. And we have capabilities that we didn't have in the same way. We really want people to respond by internet if they have access to it. Super easy.
That's how I did it.
Yeah. And it took me, I think it took me 7 minutes. Of course, I've been reading up on it, but I asked my mother, I said, okay, Mom, I consider my mom, honestly, to be like the middle of America. If you want the middle of America, you ask my mom. And it took her only something like 7 to 8 minutes. It was super short. And so we got that. We got the internet. You can do it by phone. You just call it in. You can send in the paper form. Most people have by now received one or can ask for one, depending upon the mailing situation. And then the last option that but we're at it now with only a month or so to go, is the enumerators going door to door.
You kind of went into a little bit, but what exactly is the census? And why is it so important?
Absolutely. So it's sort of straightforward in terms of what it is. Every 10 years, we count the number of people who are in the United States. And I'll say it's not the number of citizens, it's not the number of any particular kind of folks, it's everyone who's in the United States other than as a tourist is to be counted. And that information has been collected for, this is our 24th decennial census. We've started our first one in 1790, which was only like 2 years after the founding folks decided that we were going to put all this together. For what it's worth, there was only about 650 people who, U.S. Marshals who did the collection the first time around. Today, I was on my national phone call, and they gave us the exact count of the number of enumerators who are out wandering the streets. And it's 219,238 people.
Wow.
Is that countrywide?
That's countrywide.
Wow.
And the cost back in 1790 was about $44,000, and we're at 15.6 plus billion. So it's just a little bit different. And that's another reason why we want to, get people to fill it out on the internet and spend less time paying people. And approximately, we thought people might be interested. So I was doing my fun fact collection last night. Counted roughly 3.9 million people back in 1790. And now, well, we're going to get a final count, but right now we're probably talking around 330 million people in the United States. Yeah. So again, you asked me why it's important.
Yes.
Not just what it is. So there are probably three main reasons why it's important. The first two I won't put in rank order. I'll just say that one is the political reasons. It is used to apportion the number of Congress people we have in each state. There's only, 435 Congress people are the collective number. And based on the proportion of those people in each state, which changes every 10 years or, is counted every 10 years, they change the number of people. So for example, Texas got 4 additional Congress people back in 2010. It's also used to apportion the Electoral College members. And Electoral College, of course, is important in the selection of the president. And we've seen some cases, of course, where the electoral number and the popular count aren't necessarily the same. So, for now, for whatever, Electoral College is really important. It's also used to determine a number of congressional level people, used for school districting stuff. I mean, it's many, many political dimensions. The other aspect of that was the federal funding issue. There are billions of dollars that go out each year from the government. Around 675 billion, give or take, dollars annually is calculated to go to various states on the basis of this count. So the more people you have, the more of that money, that pot of money you get. And it's used for important things. It's used for SNAP. It's used for housing assistance programs. It's used for Medicare. It really counts. Again, this is all rough. I tend to give rough numbers, even though I work for the census. I was speaking to my local Rotary Club because I'm a Rotarian, and in that organization, a lot of our emphasis is on school programs. Well, something on the order of 95+% of the school lunch program for the Dallas County schools is paid for out of federal funding that's determined by the census.
Wow.
All right, one more fun fact, or not really fun fact, but really critical point, is that this data, this calculations and all, lasts for 10 years. We can have a change account all along the way, but the number, this percentage that are used is going to only be adjusted once every 10 years.
Wow. Well, I'm getting a better understanding of what the census is and how important it is. I mean, it sounded to me like it's just about as important as making sure we get out to vote in November. It seems to cover a lot more than that particular vote.
That's a really important point, I think. And especially right now, it's like I say, it's only a few months away from the elections too. And a lot of community organizations are focused on the elections, understandably. But we can't forget the census either, because for the reasons I told you, it's going to last longer. The implications last longer than any single election at the national, state, or local level.
Yeah.
So yes, it's critically important that we do this accurately.
So I have a question for you also, Matthew. So how does this relate to the LGBT community, and how does that tie into all this?
All right. So there are a couple, again, there are a couple of main reasons. Probably the most distinct reason is that this is the first time in our country's history that we're going to be counting same-sex relationships in households.
So this is the first census that has that.
Yes.
Wow.
And that's important because, you know, we as a community are looking to be recognized and to receive our fair portion of the various things that government offers. And part of it is establishing that we're of a significant number.
Right.
And so, you know, knowing that we have a certain number of households is really important. Now, another thing I would say is, you know, people sometimes ask, actually, why are there racial and ethnic questions on the census? Well, that data is used to help track and enforce civil rights discrimination laws, and to ensure that the resources are being appropriated appropriately across different places. And now with the Supreme Court ruling in June, and, you know, now set legally that you can't discriminate against people on the basis of sexual orientation and sex, I imagine that the census data will also be used to track and ensure that that's being followed.
Right.
So that's really important. Thirdly, we tend to, as a community, we frequently are in need of the resources that are provided. Something like 40% of youth who are homeless identify as LGBTQ. And programs are meant to help change that situation, to keep people from being homeless. There are other aspects, of course, that we draw on for those resources. And then thirdly, and I think this is really important because, you know, I was having a conversation with one of my friends, another gay man, and he basically said, you know, it's really not all about us. You know, we're talking through the census. It's like, you know, it's not all about us. It's about, you know, a whole diverse, rich set of communities.
Yeah.
And as we well know, we're often not just LGBTQ. We're LGBTQ, and we're of one of these other groups that are hard to count. Mm-hmm. And so we have a distinct understanding and need to be included, and we need to get the word out. And that's what we really call upon us, to have assistance to get the word out to our communities.
So who are the hard to count and, well, reluctant to answer people? I mean, I can imagine y'all trying to count us sisters. It'd be like chasing squirrels or labradoodles.
And we don't have a sister count yet. We're getting there. We're getting there. We may someday. I'm joking. But
you have 10 years to plan for the next one. So
that's in the next plan. But seriously, so the hard to count and hard to reach folks fall into these categories. And I hope you won't mind if I draw from a list I have here, because it's a long list. Highly mobile people, racial and ethnic minorities, non-English speakers, low-income people, people experiencing homelessness, like I just mentioned about LGBTQ youth, immigrants, people with disabilities, people who don't live in traditional housing, and young children under the age of 5. And, you know, again, I said, you know, I just mentioned how it's not all about us, and that's a good example. You know, kids under 5. Well, why would that matter? In 2010, we do a post-census analysis of how good we did at our counting, and we undercounted the youth by about 5%, and that goes into this whole issue of the number of the federal resources that are devoted to each community. So we want to make sure that everyone gets counted. Everyone gets counted once, only once, and in the right place. That's our motto.
Okay. So do they have a reason to be concerned? Is the census safe to do? Like, I'm kind of worried about who gets to see my info, especially if I'm putting down that I'm part of a minority.
Sure. Under U.S. Code, Title 13, if one wants to actually look it up, Census Bureau data cannot be shared in any other fashion than at an aggregate level, at least for the first 72 years. After 72 years, individual data can be shared. Is of interest to a lot of people who, for example, do genealogy and all of that. But prior to that time, it's all consolidated information. And I'll just say, well, what if you live, because in Texas we got a lot of rural folks, and people might go, well, if you boil it down smaller and smaller, there's only 10 of us in this particular area, and so they're going to know who I am, when I answer. It doesn't work that way. We have tracks. And the tracks expand to the point at which it becomes anonymous enough that you have that lumping. You can't say who particularly did what. We do have access to other agencies' information. We use it, for example, we want to know what household incomes are, different places. So we use IRS data and all of that. But it doesn't go in the other direction. We don't share that individual data back to those agencies. Like I said, there's code that protects people from that. And then also just to say that we as census members take an oath that we will not share the data, any confidential information, not only for the time that we're employed, but for the rest of our lives. Wow. And it can be expensive and provide not the most desirable housing if you answer that incorrectly, or if you don't follow those guidelines.
So is there a citizen question?
Yes.
Citizenship question, sorry.
Yeah, there is not a citizenship question. The matter was raised, as a lot of people know, in the last few years, but it was not put into the census. There's also, I should say, it actually takes me to another point about LGBTQ. Some members of the community are disappointed that the census doesn't actually get to orientation and ask, what people's orientation are, that we're only doing at the household couple level. That actually, that's a point to take note of, and it could be changed in future years. The census questions evolve a lot over the years. It used to be like 50 plus questions. You think the number 9 that we have is bad. Well, try the 50 that they used to ask. And you had to sit down with those enumerators in your living room and serve them tea and coffee and cookies and all that and go through them. So it's a lot better now. Our community at our representation level, for example, the LGBT task force, the National LGBT Task Force, they have an initiative you might have heard of, Queer the Census. And the bottom line is that the benefits that come from the census data in terms of the political that I mentioned and in terms of the federal funding level, it beats out any sort of reasons to protest and not do the census. So it is safe and you should do it. And it's more important that you do it than to protest it.
Highly important.
Highly important. Thank you.
So what can I or my community do right now? I mean, like ASAP. My understanding is enumerators are out and about and collecting the data. And this seems really important that we all participate in it, especially since it gives us more voice in politics.
Absolutely. So even though the enumerators have gotten out on the streets, they are part-time. These are not like salaried jobs that are going to last for a long time. They're part-time jobs. And so the number of hours and the number of people that we use is going to be in relationship to how long it takes to get people counted. But also, I guess really importantly, is that there is a cutoff point. Since end of September, we're no longer collecting any more information. We need to start using the data to analyze it to get the implications to the Congress and the president and the states about apportionment and all that. So we need to get the word out now to our various diverse, rich communities that this is really important. It's not just getting to the people who we know are likely to do this. I also talked to, one of our partners is HRC, Human Rights Campaign. And, I think I would guess that a lot of HRC people are just going to do this, that they're just going to fill it out. But I'm not really looking just for HRC people to do this. I'm looking for everyone in our community to go to the folks who are hard to reach, that they may know are their neighbors or may know that their neighbors know them, to trusted community leaders of religious groups and other organizations, and really raise the awareness about this getting done and encouraging them to do so. I think those are really the main things now. Use social media. It's not any easier if you're a Facebook person or whatever the various applications you might be using. It's super easy to take a copy and paste of our information and share it. And it's available in many languages. That's the other thing. It's on the order of 60 different languages that census information is available on. Another good reason to do it by phone or by internet is because you could do it in these other languages.
So are there any more pearls of wisdom that you might have that you can share with us?
Are you wearing pearls today?
No, because they kept getting caught in I don't have any neck jewelry on.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I missed it. I really actually was.
I was going to wear this thing, but it kept getting caught in my beard.
I wasn't making it up. On the backside of the earrings that look sort of like pearl on the other side. So I was wearing pearls. I was like, how convenient. But to answer your question, as opposed to talk about your jewelry, there are a couple of things I want to point out. Couch potatoes. Couch potatoes count. And what I mean by that is that in our community and many others, but it's probably one of the more unfortunate parts in our community, people are disenfranchised or they're thrown out. Maybe their parents aren't comfortable with their orientation and made their home not their home any longer. Maybe someone lost a job. There's all sorts of reasons that you might end up on somebody's couch. And so it's important that we realize that if you have a person living on your couch, and this goes back to April 1st, I should say, even though it's after April 1st, you want to talk about where you were and where the people were, either directly on April 1st that night or where they spend the majority of their time. And that's important too. I'll get to that in a second. But if you had a couch potato on your couch on April 1st and they didn't have anywhere they knew they were going and it was definitely indefinite, well, then it's your job to count them. They're part of your household. The majority of the time thing, let me get to that. And it's especially important right now with Corona. College students, other people who are out in schools and such. You want to get counted where you are in school in this case, because the majority of your time is being spent there. So you got sent home to your, if you have parents, you got sent home to them, and they love having you back, I'm sure. They just thought they were, empty nesters, I don't know. But seriously, so your parents shouldn't count you if the majority of the time you live somewhere else. You should be talking about that other place, which takes me, let me add one more thing, which is, we talk about the mailings that go out to houses. I mean, and there's even still stuff being put on door handles. If you're, that's out with the census takers are going to leave things on your door. If you don't have the codes that are on that census postcard or whatever, you enter the data on the internet and it will calculate where you're located. Or by phone, same way. It'll get figured out. Just try to only do it once.
I was going to ask that question because, I know for our household, we actually got the code. I went online, put the code in, but I was going to ask, for those who, because we have friends of ours who didn't get anything in the mail, so how would they be able to go around doing that if they don't have a code?
Yeah. If they don't have a code, like I said, they should go online and just put in the address information that they have, or they can do it by phone, and they may help through the phone line. I'm not exactly sure how that works in terms of distinguishing it. If you have the code, that's ideal.
Right.
It saves a lot of time. We don't have, because we'll actually get people sitting down and going, okay, there was a house and then there was a flagpole and a telephone. You can just see it, but there are people who are doing that. So if you have the code, that's awesome. But if you don't, we still want to know.
And if you have a code, it's 2020census.gov, correct?
Oh, that's your internet code. I mean, that's just to get to the census itself, which is a really good important point. To fill out the census online, it's 2020census.gov, and that'll take you right there. And then the code I'm talking about is a particular code for that location.
Right. Okay. I got
That you're located in. But thank you for raising that point. If you own more than one place, and maybe people who live in Florida part of the year and live somewhere else part of the year, you fill it out for the place that you are the majority of the time. If you are, let's say you own a place and you rent it out, the people who rent it out are the ones who fill it out. But if you're, be a good landlord and tell them, hey, it's your job to do this, because they may not know, or they may not, they just may not know that. So, be a good landlord, tell them, hey, you need to do this. And then also in our community, we're talking about same-sex households, although it's not, it's not, by no way is it unique to us, but let's just say in modern society, we often don't have what you would call the head of household. And generally we think that the head of household is going to fill this out. Well, basically the head of household is whoever you decide is more inclined to actually do it in your house, is what it would be. And if you do end up that more people do it than they should, again, these computer systems are very sophisticated and they'll deduplicate. Those are the main things I wanted to cover in terms of logistics, some of the kind of questions that get asked. So unless you have more of them, I think we're pretty good there.
No, you've made it very clear that I need to make sure that I fill out my census this year.
I really should mention something else, since the enumerators are now out doing their work. The census and the federal government is very committed to doing this as safely as possible in the COVID-19 times that we're living in. Obviously, the less interaction, the more desirable. So another main reason to do it online or by phone or by mail and prevent us from having to come to your house. And you can do that now. It's like the census we're real fast at collecting the data. So we know how many people did it yesterday and the day before. We update it. You can even go look at it online. If you go to 2020census.gov and follow the links, you can look it up yourselves. Yeah, and actually it's a good way if you want, another way to help is look and see which areas are low counts, because you can actually go, okay, this neighborhood down the street from me has a poor answer rate. Maybe I should go talk to some people down in that neighborhood. So it can really be useful. But yeah, so like I say, we're very committed to ensuring that it's safely done. We're wearing our PPE, so the masks were necessary, the gloves, we're keeping a distance from you. We ask you to keep a distance from us. Goes both ways, guys. But yes, so we're doing it as safely as possible within the guidelines. And we hope that people will participate as fully as possible, because we need this.
I've been texting all my friends and family. Every time I talk to them, I'm like, have you done your census yet? Have you done your census yet? I really haven't. I do it all the time.
It's good. Yeah, it's good. I'll share one last story. Good place to end. So, I do this for a living, and as you can tell. And that means I talk to a lot of people as well about the census. And so, when the end of the day comes and I'm like, thank God it's time to, take my shoes off, all that. Well, I have an annoying brother. He's always been annoying. And he sent me a text. He said, I got this thing in the mail and I don't know why I have to fill it out. Why do I have to answer all these things? And I so wanted to just slap him around, but I couldn't do that because he's not anywhere nearby for the most part. But I thought about it. It's like, no, and this is what I'm asking you guys all to do too, which is, I thought about it. It's like, no, I got to give him an answer that will compel him to take it seriously and do it. And so I thought, okay, well, what speaks to him? I thought about it. I got two lovely nieces. And I happen to know, they live in a fairly wealthy town, even though they themselves are not wealthy. And they went to school, middle school, and a lot of them went to school in trailers in this pretty wealthy community. And I said to my brother, I said, you know why they probably are in those trailers instead of in some usual classroom setting, is because the the local government failed to look at the 2010 census data and the 2000 census data to forecast what the change in population was going to be. Because they could have known that by 2020, there were going to be more kids that age than there were schoolrooms to fill them. So that's the kind of thing that actually that convinced my brother, and that's hard to do. But yes, I convinced him that it's actually mattered and that he could see it as being relevant to his life. And I think there are ways that almost everyone can see how it's relevant to their life. And it's part of our job to help people see that.
Cool. Fantastic.
Awesome. I want to thank you guys for having me and for participating.
Thank you.
It means a lot to the census. It means a lot to our community. It means a lot to our country. I mean that quite honestly.
Well, I mean, it's a very important thing, and I know that the sisters in Dallas Pride, we want to help any way we can to get the word out, and unfortunately, in the current circumstances, this is how we get to do it. But I think everybody's used to this kind of style these days, so it is what it is. But yeah, so if anybody has any other questions, just they need to go to the website and or whatever, or who would they contact if they had any questions?
The website 2020census.gov is probably the fastest and easiest way to go. Okay. And if there are people in their communities who are reaching out to them as partners, the partners generally know how to reach out to us. So for example, if you would like one of us to speak to a group on Zoom, a particular group, I do that at various times. All of us have been doing that, speaking to groups of people on these virtual lines, and it's a great way to connect. And I know it would be ideal or preferable that we would have been able to all meet together on Pride Day, but actually there's some things to be said for this focused conversation virtually. Mm-hmm. A lot of people who are out in the rural parts of Texas may not have come to Dallas on June 15th or 16th, I think. June 26th, 27th, or 25th, 26th. You ought to know it.
I should post it.
I might know it. But
hey, this year my brain is fried. I get a pass.
That's fine. That's fine. But seriously, so we're reaching people that we might not otherwise reach by using this virtual framework.
Yeah.
And I also would encourage, I think Dallas Pride is planning on sharing this feed in various places. I know that I'm going to share it with various partners. Hopefully they will take it and use it and help with it all going out.
Yeah.
Well, I definitely want to thank you for taking the time to answer my questions. I feel like I learned a whole lot today. Thank you.
I did too. Yeah. Thank you both for being here today with us, Miss Inya Indo and Matthew Roberts for the Census Bureau. Thank you all very, very much.
Have a good one.
Thank you.